Our next proponent conferee is Ms. Becky Arps. Welcome to the committee, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Becky Arps, and I'm with Americans for Citizen Voting. I will tell you that while I live in Missouri, Kansas holds a very special place in my heart, as I lived here from 96 to 99 in Overland Park, Lenexa, and Shawnee. There's been a movement across the country to allow non-citizens to vote in municipal and school board elections. There are municipalities in Vermont, Maryland, and California allowing non-citizen voting. Recently, Washington, D.C. voted to allow anyone that had been in the city for over 30 days the ability to vote in their elections. Yes, that means that members of the embassies in Washington, D.C. can vote in Washington, D.C. elections. Sometimes these votes were done through a vote of the people, but more often than not, it was done through the city council. You notice I didn't bring up New York City, because while the New York City Council voted to allow non-citizens to vote, it has been challenged in court, has lost twice, and is currently being appealed in the highest court in New York. The Kansas Constitution states that qualifications of electors, every citizen of the United States who has attained the age of 18 years and who resides in the voting area in which he or she seeks to vote, shall be deemed a qualified elector. On the surface, it makes you think that that means only citizens. Unfortunately, it doesn't. In Maryland, which has 21 municipalities that allow non-citizen voting, their constitution says every citizen of the United States age 18 years or older. In Vermont, which has 3 cities that allow non-citizen voting, their constitution says every person who will attain the full age of 18 by the date of the general election who is a citizen of the United States. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it, to the Kansas Constitution? The courts have also ruled on this. In San Francisco, which allows non-citizen parents to vote in school board elections, it was challenged in James v. Lacey et al. Versus City and County of San Francisco. The appellate court ruled, first, neither the plain language of the Constitution nor its history prohibits legislation expanding the electorate to non-citizens. As a point of reference, California's Constitution states that a United States citizen, 18 years of age and resident in the state, may vote. One may say that the statute in Kansas covers it. State statute only addresses citizenship as part of the application for registration or regarding a federal election. And part of that's actually not in effect anymore. This does not state that a municipality cannot maintain their own voter roll that contains non-citizens. Kansas has broad home rule authority, and I know y'all know what that means. Proponents of non-citizen voting in school board elections will argue that the parents should be able to impact their children's education. My dearest friend is from England, and she's not a citizen. But every teacher and every principal knows her name. She attends the school board meetings. She's even on the curriculum council. She has far greater impact on her kids' education than I do, and I can vote for the school board. People will argue that non-citizens pay taxes to the municipality. Everybody that comes to the great state of Kansas and stops for any length of time pays taxes in Kansas. I've paid taxes in Kansas. And it's very important to me how good the roads are, how good the sidewalks are, and how much taxes are paid. Until tomorrow, when I leave town. Kansas deserves to have people that have a vested interest in their state voting on their taxes. This bill is not about a lot of things that people will say. Ultimately, this bill is about giving the people of Kansas the opportunity to clarify that only U.S. citizens can vote in Kansas elections. I ask that you vote to approve HCR 5004 to let the people of Kansas vote on whether they want the Kansas Constitution to state that no person shall be deemed a qualified elector unless such person is a citizen of the United States. Thank you so much for your time.
Are there any questions for Ms. Arps? Representative Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, thank you. Do you have any instances you could tell us about of this being floated in the state of Kansas?
At this point in time, I'm unaware of any time that it has been thought about, but it is far better to address things before they become an issue. I have insurance because I don't want to lose my car if I get in a car accident.
May I ask a follow-up? Of the states you listed, it sounded to me like most of them are Democratic-led. Are there any Republican states that have put forward non-citizen voting provisions?
Georgia had a city that that was talking about allowing non-citizen voting. Ohio had a city that voted to allow non-citizen voting, and that's why Ohio amended their constitution so that only citizens can vote in Ohio elections.
And those are not Republican majority legislatures. Is that correct?
The time that it happened in Ohio, I think it was.
Great.
It was a couple years ago.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Arps? So Ms. Arps, thank you, first of all, for being here at the committee. So are there any, I'm got a question. That was a preamble to a badgering. No, the way our Constitution is written, where it says every United States citizen rather than only, are there any other states whose constitutions have similar language where they are currently allowing non-citizens to vote?
Almost every.
Okay.
Like I said, Maryland has almost the exact same language as Kansas does, and they have 21 cities at last count that allow non-citizen voting. In fact, one of them has allowed non-citizen voting for over 30 years. Vermont has at least 2 municipalities, and their constitution is very similar. California's is slightly modified, but Maryland and Vermont's is almost word for word. It's in the testimony. I wrote down the exacts, and I've got a sheet, if anybody's interested, in just a comparison of some of the constitutions. But most of the constitutions that in municipalities that currently allow non-citizen voting are very similar to Kansas.
How about our surrounding states? Do any of our surrounding states have it clearly stated that only citizens can vote in their constitution?
Iowa, Missouri, and Oklahoma passed it last year.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Arps? Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes. No, thank you, Ms. Arp. I think a very interesting testimony. I am just wondering, I mean, you have some very good examples of states with similar constitutions to Kansas, and yet where non-citizen voting arguably is taking place, at least on municipal elections. Do any of those states, I mean, do they not have case law or something where some of this has been adjudicated, no one's sued over this in those states, or do you have any knowledge about that?
Well, there's the San Francisco case that I brought up with the James v. Lacey et al., City and County of San Francisco. There is a case in Vermont which also found a similar thing, that if the legislature wanted it to be only citizens, then they should have dealt with it. Maryland also has some older case law, because they've been doing this for 30 years, that also talked about it.
Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. And a lot of my questions just come from when the time we have to work it. And so I want to make sure I'm clear. Is it your opinion, based off your testimony, that the way that the current Constitution reads, that we are having non-citizens vote in our elections?
I am unaware of any situations where non-citizens are voting. You are, and the reason why we are concerned about this, you are at risk for a municipality that maybe even considers themselves a sanctuary city. I don't know if you have any of those or that consider themselves that. They would be a municipality that might decide to allow non-citizens to vote.
Okay, and so adding these, for one word, you add 8, 9 more words, this will make us stronger? Is that what you're saying?
Every case law that I've seen says that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.